We are live now. Let me just take a moment to share the information. This is very tricky. Okay, all set. Sonia and Sonia, you have to either put your screen thoda again later on, and then
Okay,
we have to go a
because this
little
is a
back.
PC.
Otherwise,
It's a
your talk
PC.
is getting cut.
Okay,
Thora sa
I'll
back.
try to bring the PC forward. Ouch, I cannot bring the PC forward. It's completely fixed.
Okay, so you have to come again, and
I
Kalyani has
can't
to go
because
little back.
I'm
Okay.
the edge of the table now. I can't move any forward.
Okay, okay, no problem. Because lot of screen is there. And Kalyani, later on, you may have to go a little bit back. Yes, better, much better. Hmm. Yes, okay. So just that we are in proper frame.
Or should I try to get it through my laptop?
I don't know, whatever works for you.
I'll take a couple of minutes. So is that okay, or what should I do?
Sure.
All right.
Okay, I can do that.
All right.
I'm also not in a very comfortable situation because I'm at home now. Somehow my office laptop video it was not working, so I had to rush home.
Oh,
All these technical things happen, and we are not technical experts. Neither we are water experts, so it gets all the more tricky. We are in YouTube, so just that you know. We are waiting for Sonia and then we get started. Otherwise,
Yeah.
I'm all set. Okay?
Okay. Yeah.
And we have your presentation. So in case any issue happens, otherwise you are
Yeah.
good to go. You actually you did not send the presentation by okay, it was in Drive. Yeah.
Yeah, I sent it through email. Yeah.
By Drive, through Drive, no?
Yeah.
Let me see. Sonia, would you like to check your video and then we get started? Sonia, can you hear us? She's in that computer, I think.
Hmm.
Usually it always happens 5:05, so now we have arrived to 5:05
Yeah.
IST, you know. Sonia? Mm. Sonia, can you hear us? Mm. Probably her laptop has some issue with Zoom update and some things that happens.
Yeah.
Usually we join 15 minutes before for the very reason, but today we actually all joined much late.
Yeah.
And then we can start on time. I'm always requesting to join at 4:45, so it makes it
Uh-huh.
easier to do all these technical
Yeah,
issues
yeah,
are
it
always
is.
there, always,
Yeah.
always in Zoom.
So during my
Especially,
pre-synopsis,
Mhm.
yes. So I had pre-synopsis a week back, and the institution's Wi-Fi also did not work. So my one of the advisory committee member had joined online, and I did not even realize that my network is cut off. So and then
Mm.
you just lose the momentum. No, you are talking in that
Absolutely.
spirit. Yeah, and he messaged
Mm.
Bijoy sir saying that the network isn't there, and then I forgot where it actually went off. So you have to
Mhm.
say those things again, but then the spirit is lost. So those things also.
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Actually, I was in a workshop in ISAR some time ago, and we faced a lot of internet issues in
Mhm.
during the workshop, and especially in the evening there was a film screening, and it
Oh.
was just not playing. So there was some issue in the ISAR building there, but anyway. So Sonia, and now people will join, and Sonia is out, so I'm assuming she will
So
join
she will
soon.
join. Yeah. Then.
Mm. Okay, Sonia is there. So we'll quickly start now. Already quite late. Sonia, can you just check your camera and sound? Yeah.
Mm.
Okay, better. So I'm getting started. We are late already. Yeah. Warm greetings. Welcome to another session of Friday Waters Thesis Club. Today's Friday Waters Thesis Club session is on water access and agrarian livelihoods in the villages in Marathwada region. And we have Kalyani Thatte to lead the session with her discussion and PhD research. The Friday Water series is an extension of flagship program Wednesdays for Water of W4W Foundation. The idea of Friday Waters is to wet the Fridays with fun-filled and yet fruitful activities for the future generation. Friday Water series has Water Talkies, Book Reading Club, Thesis Club, which is today, Water Arts, and meet a maestro, some of them taking place once a month, depending on the speaker's availability. The focus of the Friday Waters Thesis Club is on bringing students and scholars who have done or are doing some research on various aspects of water into the session in order to discuss with them their identified problem, aim, objectives, methodology, research design, fieldwork, findings, and learning, and way forward. In the process, we would like to know the making of the research and the contribution it aims to make in the science as well as in the society. The session is also meant to increase the outreach of the research and the researcher. This is Mansibal Bhargava from the House of W4W and the moderator for the session today. I am also joined by Professor Sonia Gupta from Voxen University, Hyderabad, as a discussant for today's session, and I will actually hand it over to Sonia soon. For today's session, we welcome Kalyani Thatte to present her PhD research on water access and agrarian livelihoods in villages in the Marathwada region. Welcome, Kalyani, and thank you so much. And this is also a moment I must thank Dr. Vijay Thomas to connect you to us. And this is how Wednesdays for water, Friday waters, Monday munching, and musing with water has been functioning, that we do the ripple effect. May I invite Sonia, you to please introduce our speaker of the day and also rules of the presentation to take the session forward.
Thanks, Mansi. It's good to be back after a while, and of course, a warm welcome to Kalyani Thatte. Let me just introduce her very quickly. Kalyani is a doctoral scholar of the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences at the Indian Institute of Science, Education and Research, Pune. She has completed BA in Economics from Fergusson College, Pune, and MA in Rural Development and Governance from the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Hyderabad campus. Before joining the PhD, she worked for a year with the Chief Minister's Rural Development Fellowship and for 2 years with the Anandvan Groundwater Corpus Alliance. Through her research, she's trying to understand the linkages between water scarcity, groundwater access, and livelihoods within the normative lens of equity and sustainability. So it will be over to you soon to make your presentation, Kalyani. Just to tell you the rules, very simple. You have about a maximum of 25 minutes to present, after which there will be some interaction with me. And then, of course, Mansi will be waiting to jump in at any moment. And after that, if there are other viewers, we will love to have their feedback and interaction also. So with that, it's over to you.
Okay, I'll just share my presentation. So I'll just begin this presentation by telling stories of 2 households. So one household is a large farmer household owning 12 acres of land. The household head is has completed master's followed by diploma in agriculture. His wife is a school teacher in Jilla Parishad school. His son has completed engineering and now working in Ambizogai. And his daughter-in-law is also a school teacher in his village. So when I asked him what is their main crop, he said that it's sugarcane. So further, when I asked how do they irrigate the crop, he simply said that it's through groundwater, through a bore well. When I further asked how many bore wells he has, he smirked and said that who would remember how many failed bore wells you have. But for now, he has 3 functional bore wells. And after that, he told me that it's 8 to 10 failed bore wells that he had over a period of time. On the other hand, there is household 2, which is a small farmer household who owns land less than 1 acre. The couple has been migrating as sugarcane cutting laborers from Marathwada region to villages across western Maharashtra to Telangana and Karnataka. They have been doing it for last 20 to 25 years. And because of this seasonal migration, the education of their children is also seasonal. The household finally decided to have a bore well in 2022, but the bore well did not strike water. But when I asked him why don't they have another bore well, the household head said that and which I'll tell it in Marathi. ताई पैशाचं सोंग आणता येत नाही, meaning you cannot pretend having money. So these differences between these two households, their backgrounds, their assets, their abilities, and their struggles actually determine the pretext of this dissertation. And through the entry point of water access, I'm trying to understand how differentiated groundwater access is there in this water scarce region of Marathwada, and how differences within agrarian livelihoods are determined through data collected from two villages from the same region. Is my screen moving?
The screen is not moving right now, so if you may please check.
It moved last time.
Yes, when we tried, it was
Yeah.
moving, but yeah, that's it's strange. Can you reshare and see?
Yeah, I'll stop share and again.
Otherwise, I also have it open for you. So yes, moving.
So in this presentation, I'll briefly talk about the problem context. Then I'll discuss the theoretical underpinnings and conceptual framework I have used in my dissertation. Then I'll talk about research questions followed by field area methods. And then I'll briefly discuss 3 core chapters in my dissertation. So, as we know, 54.6% of the population is still engaged in India, is still engaged in agriculture, despite falling share of agriculture in overall Indian GDP. The agriculture has also faced structural changes post Green Revolution, where we actually saw a role of different institutions, different policies and programs which were completely directed towards having certain aims towards agriculture. However, even though there was machinery, what we have been witnessing post 1990s is the withdrawal of state support, and thus at the same time, Indian agriculture is equally facing a serious threat of climate change and climate variability, which is witnessed through increasing frequency and distribution of droughts, high intensity rainfall, dry spells, increasing heat intensity. And thus, what Indian agriculture is going through right now is intersecting economic and ecological risks, where economic risks are more coming from the agrarian crisis, which is linked to which is characterized by rising input costs, unremunerative prices, market failure, and changing import-export policies. However, even though there is growing agrarian crisis, the impacts of agrarian crisis are not equal on farmer households. Considering socio-economic differences in Indian agriculture, which are characterized by caste, class, and gender dimensions, the impacts of agrarian crisis are equally differentiated. So to understand these differences, this thesis actually uses 3 theoretical underpinnings. So one of the foremost is the use of political economy perspective, where focus is always on understanding power structures within it. So when we say power structures, it is about differences between different castes or different classes of households, or even how gender dimensions played its role. Along with understanding household level characteristics, political economy perspective equally pays attention to understanding structural factors which are beyond the capacities of the households and how they have impact on the households. The second perspective which I have used is agrarian change perspective. So as we know, with changes like Green Revolution, we have economic changes within agriculture, but these changes equally brought social and cultural transformations in rural areas and thus in agrarian households. And thus, to understand those socio-economic changes becomes imperative to understand differences in their livelihood perspectives and how they view and aspire to have certain livelihoods. Through this perspective, I'm also trying to understand how gender dimension is playing role in this specific region. So, and here I'm mainly relying on the debate between whether it is feminization of agriculture or feminization of agrarian distress, where mere transfer of land to a women or a so-called women-headed household actually make the household empower, or there is more layers to this understanding. The third perspective which I'm relying on is sustainable livelihoods perspective, started by Chambers in 1992. This perspective talks about how livelihood assets and capitals are playing role in having different kinds of livelihoods for a household, but with increasing role of structural factors, climate change, and increasing power relations, the ambit of livelihood transformation has also increased. So this theoretical underpinnings and the problem context has led to understand the issue of access through this conceptual framework. So the conceptual framework is largely based on literature review and a few visits which were done to the field. Access or non-access is the outcome which could be understood from a context. The context emerged from context is historical, biophysical, socio-structural, economic, institutional, as well as behavior. However, from that context, different drivers emerge, which actually leads to the outcomes such as access or non-access. And having access or non-access to a water resource or certain livelihood choices will have different response or different impacts on different households. So this conceptual framework has largely guided this dissertation. So based on this conceptual framework and obviously field data, the foremost question or the central question that this dissertation asks is, how do farm households respond to differentiated water access and choose livelihoods in a water scarce region? So this overarching question is addressed through three core questions, where core question one analyzes how do livelihood choices in a water stressed region differ between small and large farmer households. The second research question analyzes what are the barriers to groundwater access and borewell ownership among small farmer households. And the research question 3 analyzes what are the drivers of cropping pattern changes and impacts on small farmer households. So to navigate this research, Marathwada region was chosen. The rationale of choosing Marathwada region, which is a drought-prone and water-scarce region in the state of Maharashtra, lies in the following characteristics of the region. The region is largely semi-arid and it is characterized by Deccan Traps. And having Deccan Traps itself tells us that there is low groundwater availability within the region. The region is also part of Godavari Basin, which is called as Eastern Ganges. However, the Godavari River actually flows only from the northern side of the region, and the remaining region is actually flown through seasonal rivers. The region also receives 600 to 800 rainfall, which is less than the average rainfall within the state. And even today, 40% of the region is still drought prone. Talking about water scarcity and recurring droughts, the region, the 1972 droughts is well known across the region, and that is used as a time frame for any kind of linkages even today in the region. However, in last 2 decades, the region is facing increasing severity, duration, and spatial extent of droughts. And 2015 followed by 2018 and 19 droughts was the worst which the region has been facing. Along with that, the region is equally facing changes such as severe floods. What we faced in 2025 was the flood which was never seen in Marathwada region. So water scarcity is because of seasonality of the rivers, but along with that, it is also because of irrigation deficit. So the region only has to so far 20% of the irrigation potential achieved. So the region, along with that, the region is equally facing cropping pattern changes, which are shifting more and more towards water-intensive crops such as sugar cane and fruit orchards, which is increasing water scarcity in the region and also increasing groundwater use in the region. Thus, the economic factors are still there. However, along with that, the structural factors, as we know, Marathwada region is largely characterized characterized because of its caste and class dimensions, and climatic variability is increasing or is growing agricultural distress in the region. And as we know, Marathwada region is characterized or is known for having a higher number of farmer suicide, which is the epitome of agricultural distress in the region. And thus the overall livelihood scenario in the region is quite bleak, where there is development deficit. The region lacks industrial and service sector development. The hubs, the so-called hubs in Maharashtra region are either Mumbai or Pune, which are far away from Marathwada region, and thus the migration option, which is largely available for small and marginal farmer households, has become a seasonal migration done for sugarcane cutting. So now I'll briefly talk about research methods that I have implied in this research. So this research integrates qualitative and quantitative components, starting from preparing the questionnaire till the analysis of the data. The questionnaire had both survey questions as well as semi-structured questions. The sampling was done. Data collection was done from 2 villages of Ambezogai block of Beed district. Stratified random sampling was followed in this. Stratified random sampling was followed to have a number of households chosen from each of the villages and number of households chosen between small and large farmer households. However, even though there was the idea of data collection was different before going to field, there were certain field level aspects which played important role, and due to which I could not collect data from that we had actually imagined. So ultimately, the data was collected from 184 households, and the analysis is based on data collection from these number of households. So during data analysis, since it has survey question, coding was undertaken, and for semi-structured question, transcribing of the data was undertaken, and through content analysis and quantitative analysis and their integration, the final analysis is done in this dissertation. So now I'll briefly talk about 3 core chapters that I have in my dissertation. So chapter 3 talks about differences in livelihood pathways, and the question that it analyzes is how livelihood choices differs between small and large farmer households within water scarce regions. So as we know, livelihood encompass many activities and strategies, and it is not always that only fulfilling basic needs is the aim of livelihood diversification, but also there are aspirational issues attached to livelihood choices as well as livelihood diversification. From gaining respect to gaining mobility are variety of reasons for which livelihood choices or livelihood diversification is actually undertaken. However, not merely increasing the number of activities could not be understood as increasing mobility of the household. There are multiple push and pull factors which we need to understand to actually get whether the household is actually being mobile or being pushed to a good end, or it is kind of a distressed migration that the household is undertaking. In literature, livelihood, so these livelihood changes are understood from various perspectives, starting from Chambers and Conway. Sustainable livelihood framework has been the central for understanding how differentiated livelihoods actually emerge. But then the Han and Zoomers have talked about how livelihood pathways are important to understand how livelihoods are actually shifting their directions. Then there are Dorward et al. Who have given 3 stages in which household actually try to gain mobility. And then there is Natarajan et al. Who have actually talked about sustainable livelihoods framework for 21st century, where they have talked about not just household level assets, but are also talking about how structural factors, how power relations and the emerging risk of climate change is actually shaping livelihood dynamics for the households. While talking about Indian scenario, as we know, even today, 54.6% of the population is still engaged in agriculture. However, what we see typically in agriculture is also increasing reliance on non-farm employment opportunity and sharp decline in the crop incomes. Thus, even though the agriculture is still a mainstay for the household, they have to rely on other activities to support the agriculture. And thus, it is driven largely by agrarian crisis and not by structural transformation within the economy, where the larger population gets absorbed in industrial and service sector development. So for this particular chapter, I have relied on data collected on livelihoods from 184 households, and there I followed a categorization, and this is the data that we know now. So as we see here in the graph, there is very small section of the households which are actually only dependent on agriculture and livestock, but there is increasing there are increasing households which are dependent on additional income generating from other activities. And here, as we see clearly from differences between large and small farmer households, small farmers are more dependent on income generated from labor activities, whereas vice versa. And large farmer households are largely dependent on income generated on non-farm activities. And thus, based on data analysis, I found out that there are 3 level factors which actually determine whether with what kind of livelihood choices the household will have, and the choices that household could sustain. So as we see in this graph, there are household level factors, there are village level factors, and then there are regional level factors. And there is always interaction between these factors that lead to household level choices. So what we know from this and this data is that livelihood choices by household result from interaction between household level, village level, and region level factors. The idea of sustainability of livelihoods is also changing in the region. So earlier, the region is known for having rain-fed agriculture, is moving towards water-intensive agriculture. So with water-intensive agriculture, borewell is emerging as an important source, and having a borewell is determining sustainability of livelihoods. But it is coming at the cost of sustainability of the resource. So this kind of clash is emerging in the region with changing livelihood scenarios. Also, what we see from households only relying on agriculture and livestock is that the livelihood diversification is undertaken out of necessity. So they need to have other activities to support the agriculture. So now I'll quickly move to the fourth chapter, which is the second core chapter, which talks about determinants of groundwater access. So as we know, groundwater used for irrigation comprises of 70% of total irrigation. And with emerging borewell technology, the reliance of groundwater has increased manifold. And India is among the largest user of groundwater in the world. So what Tushar Shah basically calls it as democratization of irrigation, where even small farmer households are able to have borewell ownership. However, the democratization need not mean equitable access to groundwater, meaning that the small farmer households have to gain that borewell ownership through differences within financial capacity, the intergenerational disparity, and also technology as a actor also play an important role in having differences between small and large farmer households. And thus, with falling groundwater levels, these inequities are further reinforced. However, what Argade and Narayan have talked about is the imaginary of life, which is linked to groundwater. Meaning that with borewell ownership or groundwater access, the households always envision of having better agriculture, better livelihoods, better income, and better future for their children. And thus, despite falling groundwaters, households try to engage with the competition for groundwater, and try to own a borewell, despite there are increasing number of failed borewells and falling groundwater level. So for this chapter, this analytical framework is used where emphasis is on small farmer households and how they actually gain the access to borewell ownership. However, what literature has shown us and what data also showed that the small farmer households actually face internal barriers as well as external barriers. The internal barriers largely emerge from the socio-economic aspects of them being the small farmer households, which are also linked to their caste, and if they as there are women headed households, it is also linked to gendered nature of water access. On the other hand, there are external barriers which emerge from other determinants such as migration and non-farm livelihood diversification, the processes on which small farmer households rely to gain the borewell. And when they face these barriers, instead of gaining borewell ownership and having a good agriculture, what they face is increasing vulnerability, falling agricultural productivity, which leads to maladaptation. And thus, this competition leads to issues of equity as well as sustainability. So in this particular chapter, I have focused on class-wise borewell ownership data. Borewell ownership, so when I talk about borewell ownership, the data collected here is include data points on depth of the borewell, depth at which water was sited, cost of every borewell, pump on every borewell, and financial source for borewell. And the data was actually collected from first borewell till the borewell was drilled in 2023. So data here was collected for both the functional as well as failed borewells. And this borewell ownership was supported through case studies. So here, I'll just briefly discuss these graphs. So these are the aggregated data for both the villages. So as we see in the first graph, borewell depth and depth at which water is sited is increasing meaning that there is falling groundwater level in both the villages. Also, as we see in the second graph, 2006 onwards, the number of failed borewells is sharply increasing than the number of functional borewells, meaning that owning a borewell is becoming costlier. But however, this bar chart is important to understand that so 1, 2, 3, 4 are the marginal, small, large, and medium and large farmer households. And as we see here, the number of borewell, the ownership of borewell is more skewed towards medium and large farmer households. Even though it is skewed towards them, the marginal and small farmer households are also in the competition towards ownership of borewell. And from that, it is important to understand what are the processes actually through which small farmer households try to gain the borewell ownership. And here I have identified, based on data, I have identified two processes. One is migration and second one is relying on non-farm livelihood diversification, through which households actually make efforts. They have their different struggles through which they own the borewell. So I'll quickly talk about migration and borewell ownership. The migration is actually undertaken for multiple reasons, but the one of the important point is also of having borewell ownership. So as we see in the second case study, which I narrated at the beginning of this presentation, is what exactly many households in the region do, and they engage in that seasonal migration, that repetitive cycle of gaining the money and investing in the borewell ownership, so that they could actually have at least the second rabi crop on their farms. On the other hand, in non-farm livelihood diversification, what we see is that the non-farm livelihood options are actually precarious in this region. Unlike a service sector or industrial development, the options that they have is either based on their household level setup, or they can go to different factories which are equally small in number. And so through these activities, they actually save money for 2 to 3 years, so that they can actually get that get that power to own actually a borewell. So here a women-headed household which I came across is their story is really interesting. So that women-headed household had ownership of borewell when her husband was alive, but as soon as after death of her husband, the household was actually not given any access to the bore well. And now, so even though now her son has come to an age and he's also helping her in the agriculture, even her brother-in-laws are not giving any share to them in the bore well. So now what this woman is doing is that they are saving up money from last 3 to 4 years so that they could actually pull that money together and have a bore well. But even though they could just drill a bore well, she further added that drilling a bore well is not enough. You have to have that power connection. You have to have that motor casing and everything. And for that, every extra expenditure they have to work, or they have to save for 2 to 3 years to actually get that meaning so that they could own a bore well. So these are the differences, or these are the processes which are different for small farmer households and large farmer households. Large farmer households who actually own different assets, have capabilities, have good social networks, can have multiple bore wells, whereas small farmer households who have lack of these assets, along with that, they face the barriers within migration and non-farm livelihood activities. The meaning of ownership of borewell is different for them, and thus when we talk about equity of borewell ownership in scholarship, we need to understand that it is equally important to pay attention to processes and repercussions of these processes on the households, along with the means and assets that they have. So with this, I'll move to the last core chapter of my thesis, which talks about impacts of cropping pattern changes. So starting from Green Revolution, what we have witnessed is that structural factors carried out through different policies, different institutions, programs have played important role in changing agricultural scenarios within the country. Households also tag their aims and objectives with those structural changes and be part of those structural changes. In this chapter, I have focused on 2 case studies. So these are the case studies of different crops. So I'll be focusing on introduction of soybean and increasing area under sugarcane, which have actually changed the agricultural scenario in the region. For this, the data was collected for 2002, 2012, and 2022. So data collected for 2022 was the actual plot level data when I was actually doing survey when I was actually collecting data in the region. Whereas 2002 and 2012 data is based on the recall data. And it is also, this changes are supported with policy documents, government reports, and field observations. So I'll just run through this graph where the region is characterized by various crops, but why it is important to pay attention to increasing area under soybean and sugarcane is due to various reasons attached to it. So soybean was introduced as a completely external crop to the region. Earlier, the cropping pattern of the region was largely rain-fed, with cotton being the main cash crop. However, with soybean, the Kharif and Rabi patterns of the region have shifted, in the sense that sorghum, pearl millet, which were earlier Kharif crop, have now shifted to become Rabi crops, and soybean is largely emerging as a Kharif crop. And as we see from data from both the villages, the increasing area under soybean is exponential. Secondly, why sugarcane is important? Because of the growing water scarcity in the region. So even though this region is water scarce, facing droughts, the sugarcane area is still increasing in the region, though marginally in these villages. But what we see across Marathwada is, even though there are droughts, the area under sugarcane is not falling at all. And thus, we need to understand what are the structural factors that have actually led to increasing area under these 2 crops. So for soybean, starting from 1970s, it's through yellow revolution, through which soybean was actually introduced in the region. So soybean was actually introduced for considering increasing demand for pulses and edible oil. But what we have seen in this region is that soybean is still not eaten at the household level. Soybean is largely cultivated, and the product is largely for the export markets. Uh, However, what we see at the regional level, the factors are equally important. Soybean actually gave a short, soybean being a short duration crop of 3 to 3.5 months, gave advantage for having earlier Rabi season. So what used to happen with earlier sorghum and pearl millet is that the cropping months for the region is beyond 4 months, and thus it pushes the Rabi season and it increases the water requirement, which was reduced with the introduction of soybean. It also became a good alternative to cotton when cotton was facing crisis due to BT cotton and its other linkages. Soybean came as a rescue crop in the region. Also, there is push from agricultural department when there are import export changes and when there are import export changes, and the agricultural department also asks farmers to cultivate soybean even during summer seasons. And soy mills which are increasing in the region are also providing insurance related efforts, procurement related efforts, which is making procurement very easier for the households. For sugarcane, starting from fair and remunerative prices, procurement policy also played an important role, where the onus is on the sugarcane factories to fetch all the sugarcane from the area. In Maharashtra, specific factors, cooperative movement had played a humongous role in increasing area under sugarcane. Along with that, state government schemes such as Jalayukta Shivar Yojana, Magil Thala Shettale, which had different aims, have actually led to increasing area under sugarcane, because there is no water balance in the balance attached to these crops. Along with that, while talking about regional factors, even though soybean is equally important, the prices which are attached to sugarcane are irreplaceable while talking about all other crops. Even though there is increasing water scarcity in the region, if the household is able to manage its bore well and manage to have some water, the crop is actually robust, and it can mitigate climate variability. So it does not get actually pushed by severe droughts, as well as dry spells or high intensity rainfall. So as long as the household is able to manage water, the crop is really robust. And as one of the farmers pointed out, when you it is less heartening to cut down sugarcane than fruit orchards or sericulture, in which you actually invest 3 to 4 years to gain something out of it. However, even though there are structural factors which have played important role, the impacts on small farmer households are actually less taken into consideration in the policy aspect of it. And thus what we see in what we see through data collected from both the villages is that these crops have actually led to inequity in access to groundwater. The inequity is very much visible with respect to sugarcane, but what is happening with soybean is very interesting in the region, in the sense that the region is equally facing dry spells and late onset of monsoon. And when such things happen, only households who have groundwater access could sustain their soybean crops. And small farmers, typically not having bore wells, lose their crops. The price uncertainty even is largely linked to soybean crop. So even though minimum support prices are given for soybean, as farmers have been talking about, it is hardly met in the region. And there are households who have kept the soybean produce for 2 to 3 years in the hope of increasing prices. But what is happening adversely is that the prices are not increasing, and with 2 to 3 years it has kept, the produce is also getting damaged. Adapting to climate variability, as which is also linked to groundwater, is equally visible. And the small farmer households who do not have other access to assets like bore well face this variability harder. There is also monocropping, which is linked to soybean in the region. And as one of the farmers talked about, is that the soybean is going to have fate of cotton, where what we have seen in case of cotton, falling productivity, yield, etc., is going to be part of soybean, because it is going towards the path of monocropping. And thus, what these two cases tell us that farm households actually have very limited agency and are responding to external signals in deciding their cropping pattern. Even though their household level assets and capacities play an important role, uh, it is through the external factors linked to market prices, linked to import-export policies, linked to procurement policies, play important role in actually determination of crop choices. And thus, what we started with is about talking about differences in water access and differences in livelihood choices. But it also has implication. The dissertation also has theoretical implication in the sense that it tries to contribute in the efforts towards revising sustainable livelihoods framework by adding empirical evidences. So, as I previously discussed, what Natarajan et al. Have talking about is bringing structural factors, power relations, and a role of climate variability as important determinants of livelihood, along with household level aspects. And this dissertation, through its empirical data, tries to contribute through this larger debate. While talking about policy implications of this research, will come from the again the village level data what we are gaining. So what we have seen in policies like Nanaji Deshmukh Krishi Sanjeevani Prakalpa or Jalayukta Shivar Abhiyan is that the increasing water availability in the region is given focus. But what is missed is how it has differentiated impacts on different households and how we actually need to have some kind of water balancing. And thus this data or this case studies would help to understand bringing those inequity and sustainability issues better in the discussion. So this is it. Thank you. Thank you for giving me this platform to share my
Thank
research.
you.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Kalyani. That was, I was going through it as you were explaining, and there was a lot more for you to say than
Yeah.
what we see on the slides. So yes, it was very gripping and extremely informative. I know that you are absorbed in your research and study, despite the little one, I'm sure, taking a lot of your attention. So yeah, I mean, thank you for this wonderful
Yeah.
presentation. And quickly, since we started late and we don't have that much time, I'm just going to ask you a few basic questions. One is that you have taken data. I'm a little concerned about that because I know that the census never happened in 2021, but we are at 2026. So can we actually quote data from 2011? Should we not also try to get other sources with which we can say that though we don't have census as the most reliable data, but we can also talk, because see, once you have data which points to some other phenomenon, then that's also a takeaway. So I'm just wondering how you're going to be able to do that. If you have any ideas regarding that, please tell us.
Yeah. So can I answer it right now or at the end of?
Yeah. This is an interaction. Yes, please.
Yeah. Okay. So there is economic survey, like the recent one which we had just now, 25 and 26. So they quote something like 46% of the population is still engaged in agriculture. But yeah, so I actually need to use that as well. But as you said, the census is actually reliable, which you actually have collected by going to each and every household. And but we don't have census after that. But yeah. So
don't know when it happened. So yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, but maybe I should also, as you have pointed out, need to take into consideration about economic survey, which is also a government data, and 9% decrease for India level is huge, so to say.
Huge,
The falling
exactly.
Yeah, so
exactly.
that yeah. So that I'll take into consideration.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, right. So the other thing is that I was wondering that owning of borewell seems to be a big thing, like you've mentioned, and people are saving up and trying to get to own a borewell. But of course, failed borewell is also a phenomenon over here.
Mm.
So that means just owning the borewell does not guarantee that you will
Yeah.
get water access, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So is that well understood? Because I was really looking for some traditional wisdom. You
Mm.
talked about gender and women-led households, where you would expect that there'd be some traditional wisdom which would tell them what is going wrong and how to make it right. For example, you cannot expect, I'm sure they know that much better than us, being farmers,
Mm.
that you cannot, in an unlimited way, you cannot extract water. There has to be something done to also recharge. Is that wisdom there somehow? Did you see that?
So, uh, uh, I mean, the wisdom is obviously there, but so this is with, I mean, when I actually started this PhD project, I actually had this question in mind that, Marathwada, we are talking about drought prone and increasing bore wells, sugarcane, etc. So there has to be something traditional knowledge, traditional systems, and this is what with actually went for first scoping visit. But unlike Vidarbha region, which has Malguzari Talav, and it's a traditional lake sharing kind of system where farmers and even fishermen work together to have
Right.
those resources, and it's like more of a commons kind of a concept. But
Mm.
unfortunately, that is not present in Marathwada region because the cropping pattern was largely rain-fed. But since the cropping pattern is shifted, the only source they could rely on has become borewell. And in these two villages, there are no other sources like surface water irrigation in terms of canals are available. And thus, here the competition is more persistent than other parts which might have dams nearby and then canals nearby. So that is there.
Okay. And so the change in cropping pattern, for example,
Hmm.
like you were mentioning about soybean and
Hmm.
sugarcane, those are much more robust. Sugarcane being more
Hmm.
robust and able to take the vagaries of nature and all the very hardy, like you said.
Hmm. Hmm.
Does that also harm the soil in any way? Is it because water content we understand, but
Yeah.
if overall it's also leading to a disbalance in the nutrient content of soil, then that's also a problem. Is
Yeah.
that an observation? Did they mention anything, the farmers, regarding that? Because they would be the first ones to know.
Yeah. So I
Yeah,
mean,
they
not directly in my villages because even then, this soil part also came to me when I came back. So in during the field, my only focus was gaining everything and anything related to water. But what I've seen in other parts is, they are actually shifting away from sugarcane because sugarcane reduces the soil quality. So, for example, in Atpadi Taluka, which is kind of a drought prone region, and it has got now canal water and everything, but despite having canal water, they are shifting now from sugarcane to other crops because they have seen that even though you have plenty of water, the sugarcane reduces the soil quality and it gradually becoming barren for other crops like sorghum or considering your food
right,
security, fodder security, and they are now
right.
shifting. So this trend is very limited, but yeah, but in my field I never had this focus, so I might not be able to justify it
Right.
through answer. Yeah.
Okay. Sure. Thanks. And it's been going on at 6, going to be 6. So, Mansi, would you like to come in and ask? Because I still have some questions, but we can wait. Mansi.
Thank you so much. And thanks, Kalyani, for this wonderful, elaborate presentation. I can bet that you have never presented all the 5 chapters together at one platform. So that's what we did. However, what happens when you present the whole work like this? It gets also lost in where to really pin the questions. You know, uh, for especially for audience or readers who are hearing your work for the first time. So I have also many questions, and it was so nice to hear you. You were so spotlessly and very well presented, and I truly appreciate that you started with a story. I think it is also something for all youngsters to learn how to present oneself. So that's one part of it. Now, coming to your chapter 1 and theoretical framework, because that is where I usually pin my questions, theoretical framework, and the methods. And Sonia focuses on the context and the issues mostly. That is how we divide our work also. You presented a framework of where you had 4 key, I will say, pillars on context, drivers, outcome, and responses. And I can recall it is very much the Elinor Ostrom's framework on institutional analysis development framework. Have you referred that framework to some extent or not? I'm just curious if you can just respond to that, then I will have a follow-up question.
Yes, so during my master's as well, I was working on groundwater access. So there I was actually working on how community stewardship could be built. And then I had referred to Eleanor Ostrom's framework, what you mentioned. And yeah, that was very much in my head when I was, actually working on access and non-access. It's just that here the focus is largely on the household level and how household actually manages through different factors. That's the difference.
Yeah. Now, why I ask this from your conceptual framework is the way you have crafted it. It is pretty much in that frame of institutional analysis development framework, and what is probably a good idea for you to do in your conceptual framework to look at the feedback loop and mechanism, which is the strength because you have actually, because your framework looks very linear. Let me just put it in a very blunt way. And then you will have room for looking at the feedback mechanism. And, especially when you are talking about how structural reforms have brought change in the way farmers perceive agriculture, and in return, how the distress is also giving a very new form, right? From bringing soybean to sugarcane and to promotion of groundwater extraction, even through the structural system, then giving tax benefits, then giving fertilizer benefits, and so on and so forth. So the institutional part can be better captured, and you may actually get a more circular framework than the way you have presented right now in a linear way. I'm not getting into each of the chapters because each chapter I really would have wished, pardon me for being a very brutally honest person, but I would have really wished that you presented just one chapter so that we could have gone in deep analysis and discussion on it, because I want to really ask you questions from every chapter. They are so tempting and so rich in information that I'm just falling apart even to respond and ask you questions. But then my next question is also related to your theoretical underpinnings from which you have actually drawn your conceptual framework. And I'm just wondering, before I ask the question, what stage of your PhD you are in? I'm assuming you're almost closing, right? Defending soon.
Yeah, so no, I'll be submitting in next 3 to 4 months. So I also got feedback during my pre-synopsis, so that I need to incorporate. And obviously from this session as well, I'm getting good questions to think more on my dissertation, which I'll include in my sections. And then within 3 to 4 months, I'll be submitting.
Okay, so you're almost closing. In other words, you are going to now package the whole work which you have done in a nice way, readable and legible way, which you have already made it. That actually now pushes me to ask the question on theoretical underpinning and the way you presented clearly in chapters. So this is more of a methodology question, not the methods which you have taken. Did you do your PhD in segments? Because I would still like to see the interrelationships of the 3 pillars of theoretical framework which you presented: the political economy perspective, the agrarian change perspective, and the sustainable livelihood perspective. It actually goes back to what I am talking about. What are the interrelationships? Probably you can show it in graphical way. This is just a suggestion, or show it in some way in the conclusion how they are complex and they are linked with each other. Are you planning to do that for your conclusion chapter, or I'm missing something probably?
No, ma'am, because when I'm also talking about limitation of the dissertation, it might be also criticized that, you are using three different perspectives, which are like bigger chunks within themselves, and then why there is need to have actually integration. And to answer that, thinking about that critic, I'm actually going to show the interlinkages, because when I say as livelihood choices, it is also linked to power relations, what small and large farmer households could have. But when I'm talking about social change, it is also because the changes in aspirations. So, for example, I'll just, if I can say, give some personalized example. So, when I was actually going to the field, I'm from Western Maharashtra, which is a southern part of Maharashtra than Marathwada region. And one lady, she just asked me that, in your areas, the sons would be getting married very easily because they have sugarcane. And in our area, they don't have sugarcane. So that's why, so all these things are very much linked. And this is what
Absolutely.
social change is. And that's why you need to, and these are aspirations. So because what imaginary of life is, better life for their children means they are getting married nicely into good families. And how these economic aspects and everything is connected is what I'm actually trying to show through these case studies and their quotes and everything. So
Yeah.
this interlinkages is where, in my conclusion chapter, I'm actually talking about, this might sound like a limitation, but this is what data has actually made me to have in terms of integration through these cases.
So I have two ethical questions now. One is research ethical question, and one is on-ground ethical question. When you have so much of rich information and rich theoretical framework using, and I'll give example here. You talked about feminization of agriculture. You talked about equity. You talked about the groundwater extraction. You talked about structural changes. You talked about how it is bringing that the Rabi crop is becoming Kharif, and Kharif has been already being dominated by a completely new crop to this country. Mm, do you think you are able to do justice to all of them in one PhD research? Personally, I felt it was three PhDs. I will be very honest on that. And this is how these Friday Waters have really helped our previous scholars, because I always play that devil's advocate to just see how you can put them together. Do you think you have really done justice to all these points which are a PhD by themselves?
So
I mean, it's
yeah.
a complex thing, and it will be very interesting. I will be keen to read how you write your conclusion, because I would love to hear you for whole day. I will be very honest on that. Now, the second ethical question I would like to ask, which comes from scientizing of politics and politicizing of science. When you see there's a structural push to use more groundwater in a place like Marathwada, which is the most drought hit part of the country, a researcher goes out and studies how more and more groundwater extraction is done, and also brings up the equity issue that if poor farmers have better extraction of groundwater, they can have more equitable access to water. As a water scholar, I am alarmed. It's like, all the rich people talking about making all the poor people rich, and not really reflecting upon that it is time that they have to become little unrich than making all the poor people rich in a time when the whole the planet is consumed three times its resources. Where do you see not only the practical ethics of people who are there on the ground and researcher, in a way, are you promoting that poor people should also get more access to groundwater? And what happens? You yourself mentioned India is one of the largest groundwater extractor in the world. 70% of the world's groundwater is consumed by India. And then there, of course, there's an equity issue. So if imagining all farmers get the same amount of groundwater extraction possibility, where are we heading in Marathwada, and how research like this, how politics, which is happening on there, or policy like this can actually push us towards more water crisis. What's your take on this? Probably you have not thought in that direction, but as I said, I am sitting here to really look at things very critically. Because see, the same knowledge can be used to improve a society or to push the society more towards the problems. Where do you see you will take your ethical stand? Because you will be at a crossroad to talk about equity, feminization, but also at the crossroad when you say that there is agrarian distress because farmers do not get access to water equitably. Where would you like to take your position? I mean, see, these are serious questions you don't need to answer immediately. But to me, research ethics is absolutely prima facie to research methods. What do you choose? And I'm sure you sensed it. How do you promote soya bean in a country where people don't use soya bean? You said that people don't consume, but then so what about sustenance farming? People are doing sugarcane in the belt where it is water crisis. So are we as scientists trying to, I will say, endorse what's going on and which is where I found your problem identification also as an ethical thing, which is fine. I mean, it's just that you have to take a stand that more people should have groundwater access. What's your take on this?
Ma'am, so again, I'll
Totally
just
grilled you. I literally grilled
no,
you.
no, no,
But
no.
see, this is also your pre-defense platform. That's what we discussed also with Bijoy, that it will be a good thing for you to get ready for your final defense, And you may get people like me who are asking very difficult questions and, ethical questions for that matter. What's your take?
So, just again quoting from the field itself. So one of the farmers asked me that it was again sugarcane related discussion. So he asked me that if you get a good salaried job, you would switch to that job. Then why shouldn't we
Absolutely.
grow sugarcane? And this has hit me that, banning things without providing some constructive solutions is something I should not be doing, because I'm not
course
living
not.
their reality. And just because I have gotten some data which shows that groundwater level is falling because of sugarcane, I just go and say that you don't grow sugarcane. So first, that
You
I should
cannot
not
do
be
that as
doing.
a PhD candidate, but
Yeah.
you can, of course, criticize how structurally we are destroying the groundwater, the soil, as Sonia was
And
asking also.
yes, and that's when, the policy implications, I feel are important, because what is happening with this Jalayukta Shivar Abhiyan was basically came in 2014 to so-called drought-free Maharashtra, where, widening and deepening of nalas, watershed treatments, everything was done, but without taking into consideration that, that increased water quality, water quantity also needs to be looked from the equity perspective, whether all farmers are gaining it. And that did not happen. And that has actually led to increasing area under sugarcane in the region.
Okay.
And so, researchers like me should focus our energies on these issues where, writing is our way of,
Of course.
getting our way. But through writing, where we can, so now the Jalayukta Shivar Abhiyan 2.0 is coming, whether they want to modify it and everything. So my effort should go towards how I can put some effort, so that again the quantity aspect would not prevail, and these kind of aspects which are actually happening on ground are taken into consideration. And instead of banning things and don't do this, don't do that, there would be some kind of constructive dialogue.
Okay.
Yeah. But
Your session can really go on, and I would really like to see you question the very importing of soybean and sugarcane into the region which never grew in the past. So maybe we will read your thesis, how you talk about traditional wisdom, as Sonia was also talking about. But we have to close because this is such a wonderful conversation which can flow for whole day, as I was saying. But before I close, I would like to announce that next week on Monday, Munching and Musing with Women for Water, we actually reach out to all the Wiki Water Resource Council members to celebrate our 4 years and 100 sessions. And it is also going to be closed soon So we do that on Monday, March 9th at 5 p.m. On Wednesday, we have Wednesdays for water, and we do meet a maestro and we look at the groundwater science and societies in India with no other than Dr. Himanshu Kulkarni. So we are so much looking forward to it. That's on March 11th at 5 p.m. IST. And next Friday, we have Friday Water Art session when we look at how water pollution from glass can be really handled by recycling and upcycling. And we have a wonderful artist coming and sharing with us why we should not throw glass into the water and what we can do out of it. Thanks a lot, Sonia, for come back and also having you in the session. And thank you so much, Kalyani, for this work. We could really feel how immersed you are in this, and it was very immersive session for us as well. Many questions for you. I think Sonia and I would love to have that interaction with you, and we wish you all the best for your final defense and submission. Thanks a lot. Please take care, and I would love to see you becoming more critical than more descriptive in your work. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Mansi. Thanks, Kalyani. All the best.
Thank you so much. Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.